Hello and welcome to another macro screencast. It occurred to me while I was editing my current book that there's an awful lot of macros being used, and so I thought it might be helpful to just give you a quick overview of loads of different macros to give you a feel of what's possible. But if you're just starting out, don't panic. What I'll be showing you is really very complex because I'm using so many macros, but remember that I've been developing and using macros for over 10 years. You can start out with one or two macros and gain some speed with those, and then take on board a couple more and a couple more, and each time you find that you're working a little faster, you'll be motivated to learn more. The central macro around which all else revolves is FredIt, and then we put other macros which are built onto that to arrange the overall setup of things. There will be a lot of different macros, but don't try to take notes, because when I've done the recording, what I'll do is go back through and create a Word file of the names of all the different macros against a timeline within the video, so you'll be able to look things up later. Anyway, let's get started and let's see if we can find the files coming in from the client. Here we are, they're in the Smith directory and in the as received folder. So there they are, look, 11 chapters, some appendices and so on. So what I do is I copy those into my main text directory there, and what you can see now is that I'm actually already working on the document. Chapters 1 and 2, I've actually finished those two. Chapter 3 I'm still working on, there's the original, and chapter 3 PB04 is the sort of latest version of that chapter, and I'm waiting for a response from the author on some of the queries. Chapter 4 there, I'm working on that one, or have been working on it, and again I'm waiting for queries coming back. So we're going to start with chapter 5. Now before we do that, let's have a look at what work we've done on the document as a whole. Obviously we've got a brief coming in from the client, and we want to set up a style sheet, so we want various bits of information, and we've got analysis macros. I've got the results of some of them there, so if we have a look at those one by one, we've got the result of the proper noun lies macro. So it reports various things about all the different proper nouns. So you've got one there which is looks as if it might be a misspelling, so that might need to go into the FredIt list so that that can be changed wherever it occurs within the document, whichever chapter it's in. We've got a report on hyphenation here, so whether words are hyphenated single or double. So again, that's something that we want to standardize, and so we're going to put some of those into the FredIt list. Dockerlize is another analysis program which finds out information, gives you an idea about serial commas, et al., how it's formatted, how the initials for names are formatted, UK, US spelling and so on. So again, that informs our style sheet. And then we have a spelling analysis, a list of all the spelling errors, and again some of those we would decide need putting into the FredIt list. So we will end up with at least a partly formed style sheet, and that will have information to remind myself of what decisions we've made about, for example, spelling American IZ, spelling, different conventions to do with figures and so on. So that's and in here we'll have our list, our word list, what words we decided, how things are hyphenated there, and those are some of the coding. That's the coding we're using in the document. So let's put that away, and let's have a look at a FredIt list. Let's have a look at the FredIt list out of here. Where are we? FredIt list. Okay, so FredIt does not just do find and replace, it also runs macros. So these first 6 items here are where FredIt is going to before it does other things, it will run those 6 macros, then it will do some more just find and replaces. But if I click in there and use a macro to jump down to the next one and then the next one, there's another one there in the middle of the list, another macro that it runs, and if I go down to the bottom here, and just before it finishes, then there are 3 more macros that it runs, and all those different things do all sorts of different things. Auto list off, switching off the automatic list numbering, unlinking fields so that if the figures and so on are set up with fields, then we want in my job I want the actual text so we don't get changes later. Setting up the language to US. So for each chapter, I load up each chapter and I run all these different things. So I make sure that each chapter, the language is set to US. Equations, highlight all the equations. Technical document, and you're going to be seeing lots of equations there. Table space before heading, that's just something I use to separate out the tables from the next heading, so that when I do find and replace, it doesn't miss any of the headings, which are because they're too close up under the table. Smith one, I can write odd little macros specifically for a job, so that's one I've done for this one, the Smith job. In the middle there you've got fig tab box tagger, so the tagging or coding is where we're putting the A's and the B's and the so on to mark up the document. And then down at the bottom, well actually if we go down here, there are all sorts of things here to do with units, and then words that need changing, spelling errors that need correcting, we've got hyphenation that needs correcting, and the way the figures are laid out. And then these last 3, we'll look at the result of this lister. It lists all the different figures and tables and boxes, although there aren't any in this one. Full point on captions, my client likes a full point on the captions for all figures and tables, so that makes sure they're there. And then the final one there is a useful one which checks whether any paragraph does not have a terminal punctuation mark like a full stop or a question mark or an exclamation mark, and just puts a little highlight on those. That's quite a useful one. Okay, so it's going to run all those FredIt items, but let's put that out of the way for the moment, because when we load up the chapter, we're going to load chapter 5. Because this is a live job, I obviously can't show you all the text for the job, and therefore I have anonymized it using one of my macros, and I've changed all the words, or I haven't, but the macro has, so that they're unrecognizable. You can still see the equations and so on, but you can't see the wording, and therefore I'm not breaking copyright by showing you a soon to be published book. Okay, so we want to be able to run the FredIt list on this, so let's try that, and it's thrown up an error. It's saying please switch the track changes on. Yes, I've forgotten to switch on the track changes, so that's useful. And what I will also do is use a macro which says, it's called save as with index, save the current file with a postfix. So I say yes, and it now becomes, we can't see it's too small, CH05 PB01. So it's given it an index number, and then when I've worked on that a bit, I can run that macro again and it will save it as number 2, so I get a series of indexed saves of the document. Right, so I now want to run the FredIt list on that. Let's just close that up, double click there. This does take a little while, so let's start it off, and it then says it's trying to unlink the fields, which is what I said, and marking the equations, and now it's working on through. Down the bottom you might be able to see that it's telling you where it's up to. It's up to number 27 out of 211 items in the list, so it's going to take a while, so I'll just switch off the recording and then start again in a minute. Okay, it's got there now. So you can see that it's added tags on here for the different headings, and we want to just do the coding for the top of the chapter, so I can use a macro which inserts a tag there for the chapter number, and let's just copy that across to there. I've left track changes on. Let's switch the track changes off, and the screen is yellow now, so I know that track changes are off so I don't forget, and I want to just accept all the track changes on that line. So I don't want track chain, I don't want CH, I want CH for the chapter title. Okay, so that's ready. Right, now in the background we have got, what have we got? Right, we've got here, we've got the tables, list of tables. Well, there's only one table, so that's not very exciting. And that table is cited, so we can get rid of that. This is a list of figures, and what that macro does is lists all the figures, all the captions for the figures, so I can see whether they are consecutive or whether there's duplication or there's numbers missed in the sequence. And then this list down here is the citations and the captions, so I can check that. So for example, figure 517, it looks as if that's not cited, so if I use a macro to jump from there into the text, there we are at 517. So if I just add a thing there to say to the author, raise a query to say this figure doesn't seem to be cited, so F for figure. So this is my comment adding macro. I want to add the comment. This is not cited in the text. Where do you want it cited? Let's open this out a bit. There we go. And then to close it down again because we want to have a look at the list again. Citation of figure 4, so it's just referring back. That's all right. That one's missing, so we want to add a comment on that one. 29, and you can see what I'm doing is jumping with a macro from there to there. So we want to add another one there. Okay, so that's those done. So I can get rid of the figures. Then another thing that would be useful to check is whether we have got all our section numbers correct. So if I run a macro called contents, where is it? Contents list by tag, that's the one, run, and it's saying what level. Well, I don't know what levels I've got. Let's say D, so it goes to see if it goes as far as level D. So that's generating a list for me. Editing list, please wait, it says. There we go. And where's my list? Here we are. So let's open that up, wind it up. So you can see that it's listed and indented all the sections and subsections and subsections. Yes, it did go as far as D, look. And so again, I can look through and check that they're all properly consecutive. And if I want to, I can look at the titles to make sure that they are correctly capitalized, which they're not, of course. Well, let's say, of course, for my job I need them with initial caps, so I've got a macro that makes them initial caps. So let's look at doing that. So I've checked those, they're okay. Get rid of that. So go back to here, and no, don't do that. What I need is from somewhere, I can't remember where. Oh, it's in the FredIt list down the bottom. Yeah, there we go. I've got a wildcard find and replace there, so if I use a macro to search for that particular wildcard find and replace, of course it's not in that document, this is fine, you wouldn't expect it to be, but I've now set up that find and replace. So I can go into here and I can go down so I can find each of the headings and add the, just correct the capitalization. I won't go through and do these all, obviously, because you can see how quick it is. Well, why not? Doesn't take long. No, I won't bother. Anyway, so we can get all the capitalization of those correct. Right, how are we doing? Okay, so we can start, I think we're reaching the stage now we can start reading through. Obviously it's not going to mean a lot with this, with all this coding to make it invisible, but you can see there's been a spelling correction there. That's track change. Look, the track changes is still on, so you know, if I need to work on it and make some changes here, and you know, I might decide that word needed some changing to it. So, and then I think, oh, it looks funny, so let's just use consolidate tracking, so that now the tracking just takes the old word out and puts the new word in. So it's quite useful that you may make sort of changes to sort of something, some phrase here, and redo it. So if you say, right, well, let's copy the whole of that and consolidate that track change, so the author can see clearly what's been changed rather than lots of nitty-gritty bits of changes. What else can we see? Look, you see there's that the end of that paragraph there is saying, well, there's no terminal punctuation. You can see it's paragraph. If I use a macro to turn the all the visible formatting on, actually this goes three ways. That's all of it. Then click it again, and you just get the carriage returns, and then switch it off. So let's just see the carriage. So that's the end of a paragraph, but there's no punctuation. That's because it's part of, it's coming into, and this is all part of one sentence. So you can see that we are going to have, and then these are the things you're going to have. And so, well, first of all, we want to tag it. So we just click on there, and it knows it's a bulleted list. So if I now run another one, it will go through, and it will, because it's part of a sentence, we want a lowercase, and we don't want punctuation at the end of the sentence, at the end of the item. And then it's just told you that it's got to the end of that list, and therefore it's saying don't go any further, and it's left the full point at the end of there. So that's ready for that. I'll come back to that in a minute. Now, so this one is a numbered list, so if I run the same macro, it will tag it, but it knows it's a numbered list, so it puts NL instead. One thing I'd noticed, you can see the equations are all highlighted there, and the equations within the inline equations, the things in the middle of the text, and because I've highlighted them, you can see immediately that sigma there is not properly spaced. This one here is properly spaced, there's a space either side. That one isn't, so I can click in there and add in a space. Back here we've got a pi symbol, and it's in purple. Why? Well, if we just select that and run watchar, it'll tell you that it's a question mark. What? Why is it a question mark? This is in a symbol font, which is this horrible thing that Microsoft produced some years ago, and we want to get rid of the, well, I do, get rid of the symbol font and get a proper Unicode instead. So to find this symbol font, we have to use a special code in FredIt, and it's got it there. So if I say OK to that, and if I load up the FredIt list, which is here, let's get rid of the formatting marks. Right, so here are some that we've already got where it's found this funny code. It's used that funny code to replace it with a proper Greek character. So if I copy that just like that, if I do a paste, then watchar is put into there. No, let's not use ordinary paste. Let's undo that one, and let's use paste as pure text, so it keeps the same formatting. And again, that was a macro. So if I get rid of that one, and then I want this to be a pi, so if I select that, this is not a macro, it's just the ordinary, it's not a keystroke, but it's just the ordinary insert symbol window that you can call up. So what do we want? Pi. So there's pi, so insert pi there, close that window, and then this one, let's just copy it, let's put it up at the top here, and let's put a hash after it. Now you will notice that the font is different here, and this is a very technical point, but some of you might appreciate it. If you were trying to, if I try to make that find and replace and it doesn't come out in Times New Roman, then it won't work properly. So I've changed the basic font of the FredIt list to Arial, so that I can make this line and the other ones like it, these are in Times New Roman. These are Arial, these are Times New Roman. So because that's in Times New Roman and because it's in italic, then when it does that find and replace, it will make the resulting pi there Roman and Times New Roman, and it will make it italic. So I've put a hash there to stop it. I'm going to run FredIt, but I'm only going to run that one item at the beginning there. So I run FredIt, and so it's made that change to pi, and it's highlighted it in blue, as you can see there. Okay, so it's done that extra FredIt item, and yes, we did remember to add it into the list. So having added it into the list for this chapter, chapter 5, then in succeeding chapters that will be done automatically when we run the FredIt list. I won't have to do it separately, so we can get rid of those again. Okay, well, we still haven't finished yet. We've still got more things we can do. Let's get rid of that. References. This document has some references down the bottom. They may look a little strange. Interestingly, that's been changed, which presumably it shouldn't have done in a reference. And so if I undo that change using macro, there we go. So that will undo that one, unless it was a spelling error, which it might have been. But anyway, won't worry about that now. Okay, so references. We want to check the citations of these, so we select the references and underline them. Let's make it a bit smaller. We're a bit on the big side there. Oops, down the bottom. So we now want to what do we want to do? We want to run citation lister, which is that one. So it makes a copy of the file and creates a list. So it's created a list of the citations. So now if we click in the first of those references and run citation list checker, I think, yes, that's the one. Yep, we go. It says it's checked 7 references and there are 3 of them unmatched. Okay, so let's have a look and see what we've got. Right, okay. Now, one thing we should have done before running, this is a good point, before running the reference checker, is to run proper noun lies. Because if you run proper noun lies on this one, let's do it, we've got time, we've got all day here. So if I run proper noun lies on chapter 5 there, runs through all the alphabet, checking and comparing all the different names to see how they are. Okay, now I did that because I happen to know that this one is a spelling error. Look, there's a single Y and a double Y, same name but they're different. So let's move that out, and sure enough, here it is. Look, so if I just select that and go search upwards, the citation there, B and C 2016, is with a double Y, and in the actual reference list it's a single Y. So it's a spelling error. So when we got our list which said this is highlighted because it doesn't match, so there's the citation here which doesn't match with the listing there, but we know that's the same one, we can see that, so we should have checked the spelling first before we ran that. Now what about this one? This one here, it seems to have got two dates, 1687 and 2015, so the citation is to 1687 and that's picked up the 2015 instead. Okay, and this one, something 2014, don't know what that is. So if I go up, can't find that. Okay, we've got to sort that one out and find out why that doesn't match with the listing. Okay, so let's get rid of that one. One thing which is quite useful, which is to be able, using a macro, to take a copy of the document and make a sort of text copy but with a bit of formatting on, and that's useful because it doesn't only get the main body of the text, but if there are, no there aren't in this one, if there are text boxes and footnotes and endnotes, then this text here will be all of the text from that chapter with the text from the footnotes and the endnotes and the text boxes, which is sometimes useful, and then we can run some of our analyses on that. So let's get rid of that. Then another thing which is quite useful to do is to pull together the latest version of, like the edited version of the earlier chapters to compare. So if I use multi-file text and run it on, so if I click on one of these files in here, it creates a list of all the files in the folder and says, do you want to collect the text from all of them? I say no, because what I actually want to do, if we wind that up, I don't want the preliminary ones. I want chapters 1 and 2, the edited version of 3. I don't want those out of chapter 4. I want the edited version of 4, and I don't want any more. So I just want the text from those 4 files which are finished. So I run multi-file text again, and do we want those? It's all going. And then here we are. We've got some text down here that is my own text. That's my switch list for multi-switch. This is my own text, just out of my book, so it's something I can play around with, and so I can use things like add a comma, I can hyphenate, I can switch 2 words round, I can switch 2 letters round, back again. I can check if that's the wrong way around. If I check the spelling, it's now corrected it. It said that what bong bong means it's not correct. If I check that one, it says that is correct spelling, so it corrects the spelling. We might want to look something up in Google, say, so I can click in a word and run a macro and it will look up the word it's telling me about Mac Plus. If I want to actually look up a phrase, I can run a different macro in which pulls up the phrase. Well, it should have done. Here we go. It's getting there. It's gone slow. Why is it going slow? Don't know. So it's pulled up the phrase starting in the days. So and it's looked for those. And we might want to look up the meaning of a word on the OUP website. So compatible there. That's done that one. So let's move that out of the way. Then we've got things like ing, which takes off the ing, or if there isn't one there, it adds it. And if it's at starting, and it should be to start. If I click in the at, it goes to, well, it doesn't do that. Oh, okay. Shouldn't do things live, should you really? So if I try this one at work, and I want it to be, I can't get it, come on, to work. So let's try that one, see if that one works. Ah, of working, there we go. Or if I selected that, it would be to work. So anyway, that fiddles around. And we can use our multi-switch, which is a really helpful thing. So have becomes has. You can see it's in the list here, has, have. Or if it's has and I want it to have, there isn't one for run. Look, no, there isn't one for that. I'm trying to find a word that might be in my list. So if we have, well, let's put one in. So lose. Lose is a common word. So lose. What? Lose. Loses. So if I slow down a bit, we might get somewhere. If we've got something like Visual Basic brackets VB, and actually we want it the other way around, then we can do that. So we can make it VB Visual Basic, or if you want it the other way around, we can go that way. We have got, if there are sentences that are not right, and the punctuation of sentences, I mean, not right, and so we have, what should we have here? So you've got a full stop, so if that actually should be a semicolon, we can do that, or if it should be a colon, or if we actually want it as a dash, and it's changing the capitalization. And so if we have another sentence such as where are we? So let's try that one. Let's do that. So suppose I want to add, oh yes, I can add lots of words in, can't I? I can add Alt T for that, if I have to add that. Alt E for the. I often have to add the. If it's already the, and I run the same macro, then it takes the out. This author tends to miss out his by, so Alt Y for by, so we can add in that. If I want to put the at the beginning of the sentence, then it knows that I want to add the, but I'll need to change the case of the first letter, or if it's the other way around, if I run the same macro, it takes the out and puts the P there. Now there is another one which is quite useful, but we probably can't demonstrate it at the moment. Okay, I've quickly set something up here just to try and prove it. If I look at book offer, if I look at the word book, for example, and I do a count on that, it'll tell me how many times that word occurs, and depending on the case and whether it's a whole word or part of a word. But if I select book offer and do a count on those two, it tells me whether it occurs as two words, how many times it occurs as two words, how many times it occurs hyphenated. I think I ought to stop while I'm not making too many mistakes. So that's about it. I'll stop for now and just remind you of, if I can find it. Yes, I found it. So it's here. Okay, so we've got here the address where there will be a list of all these jolly macros that I've been showing you. Well, I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope this recording has actually worked. Bye for now.